Hello बच्चों, let's see passage 2. It talks about the Indian Constitution guarantees every individual a dignified life without any external exploitation. Article 21, which has been a grand norm for personal liberty under Part 2. Also, the right to shelter is implied as the fundamental right under the garb of Article 21 itself. An incident took place in January, which continued up to March-April in the state of Karnataka, where some poor migrant laborers were evicted from their native houses and shelters, and concerned huts were demolished. This happened in the daylight in the presence of BBP and Marathali police, as contended by the petitioners in the writ petition. These migrants were targeted, and rumors were circulated that they were living illegally with a Bangladeshi identity. In pursuance of their misinformation, the authority took coercive steps. Coercive matlab harsh steps. Right to shelter has been one of the most important facets of Article 21, and there have been some landmark decisions by the Supreme Court which has upheld it as a fundamental right. तो जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट है उसने विद टाइम बहुत सारे लैंडमार्क जजमेंट के थ्रू राइट टू शेल्टर को एक फंडामेंटल राइट बोला है. So when the Karnataka High Court learned about the incident, it took a suo motu cognizance. Suo motu cognizance मतलब किसी ने केस फाइल नहीं किया, हाई कोर्ट ने खुद से देखा कि ये गलत हो रहा है, and it took the matter in its hand and directed the authorities to provide the information. Lately, when the matter was posted before the bench, it was observed that the court, prima facie, it appears to us that it was a very high-handed action on the part of the interested persons of destroying the huts, thereby violating the fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution of India of the hut dwellers. Fundamental rights are enforceable against the state, however, fundamental rights are subject to reasonable restrictions. We all know that reasonable restrictions apply हो सकते हैं. फंडामेंटल राइट एक एब्सोल्यूट नेचर की राइट नहीं होती है. द टर्म रीजनेबल रेस्ट्रिक्शन implies that the limitations placed on the person's ability to exercise a right should not be arbitrary or unreasonable. A law that arbitrarily infringes on a person's right cannot be considered reasonable. एक arbitrary infringement है अगर किसी के भी right में, तो उसको हम reasonable नहीं बोलेंगे. As a result, a balance between rights and restrictions is required. To conclude, it is noteworthy to note that the shelter is something which is really an essential element of one's life. One may live without a job, but not without a shelter. Dignity hits back, as the court has rightly observed in the Shanti Shastra Builders versus Narayan Kimlal Totme, that the right to life would within it sweep the right to food. अब right to life में हम right to food, right to clothing, right to decent environment and a reasonable accommodation to live in सबको include करता है. The difference between the need of an animal and a human being for shelter has to be kept in view. For the animal, it is bare protection of the body. For human being, it is suitable accommodation which would allow him to grow in every aspect, physical, mental and intellectual. The right to shelter therefore does not mean mere right to roof over one's head, but right of all the infrastructure necessary to enable them to live and develop as human beings. Now that we have seen the passage, let's see the questions. Question number 6 says, which of the following instance is not a violation of the right to shelter under the Article 21? तो हमें बताना है which is not a violation, मतलब कौन सी चीज सही है according to Article 21. He says Ayan took back his property which he was the sole owner of back from Ishan, who was illegally occupying it. This is a right option because it says that Ayan was the sole owner of the property, and when he took back from the property from Ishan, who was illegally occupying it, he exercised his right to shelter and did not violate any other person's right to shelter. Ayan took the property from Ishan in which he had no share and who was illegally occupying it. हो सकता है कि ईशान illegally occupy कर रहा था प्रॉपर्टी को, बट अयान इस प्रॉपर्टी का ओनर है या नहीं ये क्लैरिटी नहीं दी गई है इस ऑप्शन में, एंड हेंस दिस इज अ रॉन्ग ऑप्शन. सी सेज Karan illegally destructed a building where laborers were staying and regular rent was paid to the owner. Again a wrong option because it says illegally destruct किया है जिसमें वो लोग आराम से रह रहे थे, रेंट पे कर रहे थे, सब कर रहे थे. D says government in order to construct a dam demolished slums and did not provide any alternate alternate accommodation to the people living there. Again a wrong option because it does violate article 21 right to shelter, क्योंकि आपने सबसे पहली बात तो उनको डिमोलिश कर दिया उनके ऑलरेडी कंस्ट्रक्टेड स्लम्स को, और उनको कोई ऑल्टरनेटिव अकोमोडेशन भी नहीं दिया. Let's see question number 7. It says which of the following statement cannot be inferred from the passage. Again cannot be inferred मतलब तीन options infer कर सकते हैं और एक option रहेगा जो नहीं कर सकते हैं. A says the right to shelter is an important part of Article 21 as right to life is incomplete without inadequate shelter. This is a right option because yes, right to life will be incomplete without a shelter. B says right to shelter is only available to those refugees who are living in India with the permission of the government of India. This is a wrong option. No such thing is given or mentioned in the passage. So this cannot be inferred and this can be inferred. So this can be inferred and hence this is a wrong option. This cannot be inferred, so this will be a right option. These things you need to pay very much importance. Even I got confused. C says the right to shelter cannot be covered under the scope of Article 21 due to the right of property being a fundamental right. Again this is a right option because this says right to shelter cannot be covered under 21, but it can be covered, so it cannot be inferred. So our absolute right option will be D, that is both B and C. Let's see question number 8. It says the government of India came up with a proposal of constructing a railway station in X. In furtherance of this proposal, government decided to raise off the slum close to the railway station. This was opposed by various human rights activists as the alternate accommodation being provided to them by the government included a small room with no ventilation and inadequate ventilation facility. Is the right to shelter being violated in this situation? तो हमें basically बताना है कि जो alternative accommodation मिला है जो कि compared to the original accommodation is not at par, तो क्या ये violation है या नहीं. A says no, since an alternate accommodation is being provided by the government. This is a wrong option because we have already seen in the passage that right to accommodation does not merely mean a roof above the head. It should have a proper livable condition. B says yes, as the right to shelter includes right to live with dignity and was being violated in this case. Again a wrong option. No, right to live with dignity was not hampered. C says as their homes were being raised off. Again a wrong option. They were provided an alternative accommodation and hence just because their homes were raised off, this cannot be said as the violation. D says yes, the right to shelter includes adequate living space with clean and decent surrounding and other basic amenities. This is the right option because although an alternative accommodation was being provided, it was not at par with the adequate living space having a clean and decent environment. Let's see question number 9. It says NHAI decided to construct a new highway for the completion of which a lot of villagers need to be displaced. NHAI did not make any adequate arrangement for providing accommodation and neither provided any compensation. In this slide, which of the following statement is correct? तो यहाँ पे उन्होंने कोई accommodation भी नहीं दिया, कोई compensation नहीं दिया, तो अब हमें बताना है कि कौन सा statement correct है. A says NHAI has violated Article 21 by taking away the right to shelter from village. This is a right option because yes, NHIA has violated Article 21 because they have taken away their uh, homes and even not gave them an alternative accommodation or compensation to survive in this situation. B says construction of the highways for the larger benefit and the actions of NHAI were not wrong. This is a wrong option because although the construction of highways for the larger benefit, the people who are displaced must be provided with an adequate solution, either alternative accommodation or some sort of compensation. C says there is no violation of fundamental right as right to shelter is not a fundamental right in the constitution. Again a wrong option. It is covered under Article 21, which is a fundamental right. D says both B and C. Again a wrong option. Let's see last question, that is question number 10. An area in city X was occupied mostly by the laborers who belong to below poverty line. The governmental authorities were destroying the houses in the area and were asked to show the orders under which they were doing so from a human right activist. They replied saying that they do not need such order. A petition was filed before the Supreme Court challenging this action of the government. In the light of this, are there enough grounds for the plea to be entertained in the court? So हमें बताना है कि क्या ये plea entertain होगी या नहीं court में. A says no, since it is a discretion of the government. This is an absolutely wrong option because infringing any person's fundamental right cannot happen at the discretion of the court. It need a procedure established by law. B says yes, the action of the government were arbitrary and is a clear violation of the fundamental right. This is a right option because yes, this right to shelter was being hampered when the government were government authority were destroying the houses, and hence it was a clear violation of fundamental right. C says yes, the action of the government is not reasonable. Although this is not reasonable, whether the plea will be entertained or not is not answered in the present option, and hence a wrong option. D says no, there is no requirement of any such order for the actions of the government. Again, a wrong option because there is a requirement of an order in a proper procedure established by law. I hope the passage was understandable. Thank you.